Have you ever felt that the subcultures that used to be the image and sound of young people have just disappeared? If you imagine a timeline of subcultures from the 50s to the 2010s, it kind of feels like there were no new music subcultures after that. No movement that was recognizable like punks, hippies, 50s greasers, new romantics, emos, and so on. Honestly, has there been any new big subculture in the past 15 to 20 years, at least musically? You're probably even thinking that if there's nothing new, subcultures might just be dead, right? Wrong. And today, I'll tell you why. Let's start by going back to what people call the good old days. Music used to be a medium through which subcultures would emerge. Or I mean, sometimes it was music that came from the subcultures, so it's got a bit of a chicken and egg relationship to it. Either way, it seemed like every youth movement was tied to a certain sound. But at some point, this kind of faded away. And you might be asking, why? One minor but still relevant factor you might be thinking of is the lack of rebellion. Because at some point, the things that used to be rebellious became the norm. And I think the best way to illustrate that is that we are at the point where young generations might have a mum who was into rave culture and listened to The Prodigy or maybe Rage Against the Machine, and kids could also have a granddad who terrorizes them with loud, gnarly Sex Pistols riffs that he plays on his 1959 Gibson that no one's allowed to touch. I mean, not to mention that young musicians have to try and beat those high standards that were set decades ago. In a way, things have kind of flipped, whereas the old generations that wanted to be the ones who defied norms. While today, a lot of young people overall care about going to the gym, wellness, and their mental health, and are often very much uninterested in their parents' nasty, substance-fueled music. But that's still not the full picture. Surely, if you wanted to, you could rebel or be different in one way or another. And here's where something more important comes in. Think about how people used to listen to music. You'd save up for an album, buy it, and then listen to it over and over because your collection was limited. You put money, time, and effort into acquiring that music, so naturally it became something more important to you. So arguably the thing that might have stopped music being a cult-creating medium for youth was the day that it became free. Literally, with Napster, then with random song uploads on YouTube or other platforms, and more recently, for just a meager monthly fee, you get access to all the songs you'd want to or literally be able to listen to throughout your whole life. So instead of saving up for one album per month with only 10 songs, every month you're getting access to an amount of music that seems infinite. And when things become that accessible, it's way easier to take for granted. Songs actually become a little bit like air. Air is something that in theory we should be massively grateful for because we can breathe it in, live off it, and you know, without it, we wouldn't really be around, would we? Yet, it's one of the last things we think about because it is free. It's the same rule as being a kid. You have a free home, parental care, shelter, warmth, and almost everyone takes it for granted until you move out and start paying the bills for yourself. So there's a massive correlation between how much you invest in something and how much it actually means to you. And I'm not saying that streaming services are totally free, but you've just got to ask yourself how much of that subscription actually goes to the music that you like to listen to, in the same way it would with a record. The answer is almost nothing, because you're paying for access to millions of songs, not a specific product. And that's a key thing that has changed. When young people especially would have a limited collection of music, they could spend months or even years obsessing about the same artists or albums. So it's really just a fact that the more work, money, or hassle you put into acquiring something, the more your brain recognizes it as something relevant in your life. And by the way, if you think anything I'm saying in this video is relevant, do leave a like and subscribe because that will get it out to way more people. Back to the video, if this theory is true, then the things young people do invest money in should technically be the things that they build subcultures around and find relevant, right? To try and work this out, let's make a tier list. Clothes are something you can get for ridiculously cheap nowadays. Everybody is different, but there are a lot of people who don't particularly care about fashion, and it's also really hard to keep up with any trends that might be going on. With music streaming services, it's negligible what you pay per song, and compared to how it used to be, I think only a small fraction of people even know what's in the charts right now. Collectibles like Lego or Pokemon cards, they're doing insanely well. They're pretty expensive. You spend time building something like Lego, so you form a bit of a bond with it, like that kind of IKEA effect. And you know, at this point, Pokemon cards and Pokemon stuff in general just has a cult status because you gotta catch them all, right? Movies used to be a cinema thing, then they got put on DVD, then Blu-ray in super quality, and now you can stream them in top quality just like music. So yeah, with social media, money isn't involved straight away, but for a lot of people, it's a huge time investment. If you care about your image, Instagram, for instance, might not be something that you pay for as an app, at least just to use it, but people sometimes pour hours into trying to perfect the perfect shot or edit videos. Or some people even go as far to rent designer clothes and cars just to larp a lifestyle that isn't even theirs. So yeah, it's incredibly relevant to a lot of people. And now games. Just remind me when games went mainstream. The late 90s to early 2000s. Gaming evolved from something that most people thought was just for nerds or just silly things for kids in the arcades to something fun for people of all ages, the whole family. Especially with consoles like the PlayStation 1 and 2 and then the Wii cementing that status. And funny enough, this transition happened at almost the exact same time that music became free. Let's look into this deeper. Until fairly recently, most games were physical, and even if you buy digitally, there's a real price tag on every product. And the biggest titles are made by elite developers in top studios. Just like once upon a time, musical artists came out of actual studios instead of their bedrooms. It's crazy. Even with free-to-play games, DLCs exist. I don't know anyone who is properly invested in any game who hasn't at least bought one skin or one little upgrade. Once you put the money and the hours in, you're way more likely to keep playing and keep spending purely to justify the hours and investment you've put into it. And even the totally free games still carry similar value to the way social media does. They become part of your personality and status. Like how, for instance, in Clash of Clans, your village strength is your status. And if you don't keep grinding or paying up as levels keep being added to your queen, you look pretty stupid to other people in the community. And yeah, with gaming, in many respects, it's one of the largest mediums creating communities of people who are invested monetarily, socially, like playing online with friends, image-wise with cosplays, outfits, etc., and physically in the sense that you actually have an object that you can hold, feel, and touch. You have physical games, collectibles like steel cases, amiibos, and so much more. When you've got a physical game and you look at your shelf and you see the box and the cool artwork, you might be thinking, oh yeah, I'm gonna play that later. I haven't played this for so long. But when it's in a digital library, it almost feels like you don't have it. And I think this is where things get interesting, because gaming isn't something that people just consume and forget about like songs on the radio or a burger from McDonald's. For a lot of people, the games they play are part of their personality. And I think games have started to do what music used to do. They give you that small glimpse into the person or type of people that might be playing them. I realized this when I was thinking about something my dad told me while I was still at school making acquaintances. He used to say that when he was young, the music that other teenagers would listen to was literally a way to identify what kind of a person you were dealing with up to a certain extent. Almost like a sign of your personality. When you had someone who might have been listening to current pop hits, my dad reckoned that, you wouldn't expect them to be the most original person you'd ever meet, at least from his experience. Or you could have a person dressed in black with long hair who was a metalhead, and he might want to talk about how dark the last album he listened to sounded like. Or you could have someone who was a punk and just wanted to talk about political activism. My dad would always say that just asking what kind of bands or albums someone listened to would give you so much info, or at least that little glimpse into other people. But today, and this was definitely my experience at school, music does not do that on the same level. A lot of people would tell me, I listened to everything. Or they just didn't have any knowledge about musical genres that they might have been listening to and only knew maybe a couple of things that might have been popular on social media or just average pop hits. On the whole, girls just knew songs that they would vibe with at whim. However, even today when I chat to someone about games, the answer they share with you might give you an infinitely greater outline of who they might be. And it can also be a great quick start into bonding with a person. You can probably easily imagine at least a stereotype of a person who says they're someone who collects and 100% every Zelda game, or someone who tries to get record times in Gran Turismo 7, someone who's really into battle royale games, someone who casually plays Pokemon or Animal Crossing, or a mum that plays Candy Crush and she's on level 20,681. Surely those levels must be repeating because, I mean, who would notice? But I digress. I mean, obviously there are limits to this, but I do feel like I've got a certain point. Comparing that to getting a response from someone saying, I like R&B, where you might be like, what kind of R&B? R&B from the 60s? R&B from the 90s? Modern R&B? You know, an answer like that isn't really helpful and doesn't tell you much. That's one of the answers that I got when I asked someone what albums they're into. And when I kind of prompted them to elaborate, they just shrugged and didn't really know what to say. So games in a way have become a social identity marker for youth in the way that music used to be. And you know, when I was younger and still going to secondary school, you know, that would be high school in America, I listened to a lot of older bands because that was just my vibe, especially at the time. And because of that, it didn't feel impossible. It literally was impossible to find someone that I vibed with purely based on music interests. Back in 2023, I was about 16 and I was obsessed about Oasis for about 9 months straight. Even when I was revising for exams, I would even try listening to some of Definitely Maybe in my headphones when doing math homework, but those tunes made me feel a little bit too woozy to focus. And at some points, I was trying to kind of connect with other people who might have been into the same music. You know, I do live in Britain, so maybe some other people also liked Britpop. And yeah, at least in the girls' school that I went to, I kid you not, when I talked about Oasis, some people thought I was talking about the stupidly sugary drink called Oasis. So the only people I could actually talk to about Oasis were the teachers. And I specifically remember asking them and making a tally in my planner about whether they preferred Blur or Oasis, because I was just trying to work out which band was more relevant after so many years. And after a lesson on evolution in biology, I was also bold enough to go up to my teacher, who was head of department, and casually ask him whether he reckoned that Liam Gallagher was Neanderthal. He was a Blur fan and he answered, partly. So to cut on the cringy stories, Oasis ironically became popular 2 years later when I was a lot less hyped for them and I had already seen Liam Gallagher live for about £50. Back in my day, there was no dynamic pricing. Well, yeah, actually I forgot about live concerts, but that's a whole new can of worms that I don't feel like opening today. Maybe I will in the future. But to be honest, with the prices nowadays, they are genuinely hard to afford. And since I saw Liam Gallagher, I think it was summer 2024, the only concert I actually went to after that was in autumn later that year, and then I haven't been to any since. So I don't even think live concerts are maybe doing as well as they used to. But overall, subcultures haven't disappeared or been wiped off the earth by an asteroid. They had to evolve with how people consume modern media. Because even today, someone like my dad can walk into a guitar shop, find someone who's a Pantera fan, mention that he saw them at the Brixton Academy in the 90s, talk about how Phil Anselmo played Raining Blood, and suddenly he's best mates with the guy. We get a free gig bag, a free fret job, and a discount on the guitar we're purchasing. I just don't think this is gonna happen to Taylor Swift fans, or if it has to be something that's niche and guitar based, I don't think it's gonna happen to Polyphia fans either. Another problem that's essential to point out is something that's never happened in music before, and that's the insane preservation of older music. Purists can say what they will about digital data not being the same as vinyl or tapes, but the speed and extremely high quality at which we can access any music today from 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years ago and whole canons of classical music as well, all produced and remastered to a T so that it sounds amazing, just totally kills new music and new bands. That's also a huge thing contributing to the fact that there's no new subcultures. And I finally understood that it's not that people don't want to connect with each other or be part of a community, because that's human nature and we crave it. There's just so much stuff out there, and mainstream media is so oversaturated with free music, as said, from all the decades that have passed, full of everything for all the different tastes, genres, making it way harder to have that same feeling purely from music. That's why it's easier to resonate with people who play the same games or watch the same big YouTube channel, or also love collecting Pokemon cards or Lego sets. So do I think music subcultures are gone for good? Honestly, I have no clue. It all depends on how things evolve and change in the future. There would need to be some sort of generational divide or something drastic change for people to be inspired to write songs relating to something with a certain message that everyone else resonates with, like punks in the UK who are frustrated about the crap economy, or hippies in the 70s enjoying free love like no one else before because they had the birth control pill, or people who loved electronic music in the 80s because they had a new instrument called the synthesizer and they could create these new wacky cool sounds that no one's ever heard before. And I mean, yeah, today, what new instrument or new discovery in music technology is there? I don't think everyone's gonna realistically jump to microtonal guitars, are they? Another thing is people physically meet up less often, and then with the saturation online, you could discover a million subscriber channel every day that you've never heard of. To actually have a hit today that reaches people, you have to either be in some sort of Netflix series, make the music for a game that sells really well, or you know, the music that's in those kind of biopics like the Queen movie, Elvis movie, Michael Jackson movie. So yeah, starting to conclude on this, if people aren't getting attached to music in the same way that they might have with physical goods that they've purchased, and new bands can barely sustain themselves because Mick Jagger is hogging Wembley Stadium 100 years later, then yeah, nothing's gonna change. And I'm a bit sad to say this, but I could also see gaming going down the same route. If games eventually become something you can only rent or stream, many people will get less attached to them as well. Even now, some of the games that get the most love and attention are remasters of old classics, like the new Ocarina of Time coming out. Because also, similarly to music, a lot of the things that could have been done in a 2D or 3D game have already been done. And not to mention that the corpo style greed that many companies are demonstrating is something that many people feel contributes to generic slop feeling games. So yeah, I don't know where this is headed, so I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, because this is quite a complicated subject to squeeze into a 15-minute vlog. What do you think might be able to trigger the next youth movement? And do you think there's going to be a big crazy subculture anytime soon? Let me know your thoughts and I'll try to answer all the comments I can. I answer most of them anyway, so yeah. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to the video if you found it relevant, and I'll see you in the next one.